There are those characters who can receive more development in 40 minutes than many do in 40 episodes. Some Star Trek series are guilty of taking talented performers and effectively casting them as a pair of legs to stand behind the captain's chair. One thing that does seem to be vastly improving, for the most part, is how the franchise handles its supporting players. There are still those shows that struggle with this, but across the board, if there is something Star Trek is known for, it's giving the bit and day players some real juicy material to work with. Perhaps there are few characters who will receive the development of those with the pointed ears, but let's take a look at what Trek has offered us to date. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Trek Culture, here with 10 Star Trek characters with the most extreme development. Number 10, the Doctor. First appearing in Caretaker, Robert Picardo's emergency medical hologram was presented as rigid, suffering from a very artificial manner, one that could hardly be called a decent bedside manner. The first season of Voyager concentrated on having the crew treat the Doctor a little poorly, though the standout episode Heroes and Demons goes the distance to improving this. Over the course of 7 years, the Doctor became an integral part of the crew. But more than this, he went from a colder medical technician to one who strove for more, to then someone who became an artist, a performer, a teacher, and confident. The Doctor that the audience sees by the time Voyager returns to the Alpha Quadrant is a totally different interpretation to the one we're introduced to in the pilot. This is thanks in no small part to Robert Picardo's performance. He took the character brief and helped develop that into one of the most endearing, engaging characters in the entire franchise. As it stands, we are yet to see his return to Star Trek, but this is a hologram who is seemingly ageless, so the smart money says he'll be back, perhaps with a song sheet or two in hand? Number 9, PHILLIPA Georgiou. This is perhaps a controversial inclusion, as Emperor PHILLIPA Georgiou found her development rather late in the day. For this entry, we are of course not considering Captain PHILLIPA Georgiou. They are two different characters after all. Yet, having one as the counterpoint for the other does provide an interesting contrast. Captain Georgiou was an archetypal good Starfleet officer, though this doesn't save her life in the Battle of the Binary Stars. Emperor Georgiou is as different from her as night is today. She travels with them to the 32nd century, and for a moment, her development grinds to a halt. Once there, her journey doesn't really have many directions to go in. So, the Guardian of Forever seemingly sets her right, and it's here where her arc is best depicted. She travels both back in time and to her own universe, only then truly showing that she is not the bloodthirsty emperor she once was. Her journey may have been marked by a slow change in attitude, but only here, standing once again among her peers, does the audience see the subtle changes come to full light. Number 8, Captain Christopher Pike. The first on-screen captain of the USS Enterprise, Christopher Pike was an enigmatic man for years. The Cage was a mere curio for decades, with Sean Kenny taking over the role for those infamous beeping wheelchair scenes. Pike wouldn't truly see more development until Star Trek 09, now played by Bruce Greenwood. This was a captain that meant business. Though he is injured by Nero in the course of the film, he is still more than capable by the story's close of passing command of the Enterprise to Kirk. This is revoked in Into Darkness when a serious, disappointed Pike informs Kirk that the ship has been taken from him. Mere minutes later, Pike is killed. This again seemed like the end of the road for the character. That is, until the second season of Star Trek Discovery. Anson Mount stepped off that transporter pad in Brother, beginning a journey that would see Pike depicted as a capable commander, a damaged human being, an able chef, an expert negotiator, and a skilled horseback rider. Pike's story is still ongoing, with nearly 10 years of material left before he ends up in that damned chair. He began life as a man who couldn't get used to a woman on the bridge. As it stands, now he's one of the most inspiring characters in all of Star Trek. Not a bad journey for the man. Or the quiff. Number 7, Dal. Dal RL was, in a word, frustrating when he first appeared in Lost and Found. The audience was asked to both root for him and feel the exasperation of having to deal with him, something that for the most part the first few episodes of Star Trek Prodigy achieved. However, it is fair to say that there were a few moments when Dal's false ego was more than a little grating. Compare this then to the Dal that we see in Supernova Part 2. To say that Dal's arc has been satisfying so far undersells just how much Brett Gray and the writing team of Prodigy have achieved in 20 episodes. While it was always clear that Dal was looking for his place in the galaxy, it wasn't clear if the audience was ever going to truly root for him. Sure, a lot could be excused by the brashness of youth, but how long could this last? Episodes like Kobayashi and Masquerade help us to both get to know him and for Dal to get to know himself. This journey of discovery is, in a way, one of the purest Star Trek tropes that there are. So, by the end of the first season, and the knowledge that Starfleet will make an exception for his genetically engineered self, we can truly feel pleased for this once-trying Purple Achiever. Number 6. Dr. Julian Bashir. Dr. Bashir's arrival on Deep Space Nine saw, in the space of one episode, him go from a naive, arrogant officer to a competent doctor, keeping a cool head on a battlefield. The rest of his journey in the show would offer shades of both of these, but that's not to say that there was a risk that he was floundering as the show went into its 5th season. Bashir had always been fun, but as the years went on, there was a slight risk of his friendship with O'Brien overshadowing other aspects of the character. They were a fantastic double act, but O'Brien certainly seemed to stand better on his own. That changed with the shocking revelation that for the better part of a few months, Bashir had been replaced entirely by a changeling. This was the start of a seismic shift for the young Doctor. In one season alone, he was shown dealing with the repercussions of escaping the Dominion prison, and then barely a few weeks later being outed as a genetically engineered human. This carried an automatic ban from Starfleet, something that was narrowly avoided in this case. Alexander Siddig was just as confused by some of the changes to Bashir's character, as very little notice was given to the actor before he had to just make them work. His time with Andrew Robinson's Garak probably helped prepare him, as well as his encounters with director Sloan. Bashir became the go-to innocent character to use when something shocking needed to happen, all the while displaying confidence and more than a little brashness to make the audience love the story. Number 5. Sylvia Tilly. For this list, we did consider including Michael Burnham, but honestly, we kind of felt that Sylvia Tilly just had a pinch more development in the 4 seasons of Star Trek Discovery released so far. So let's check back in a year and see how well this holds up. Tilly, much like the rest of the Discovery crew, is introduced in the 3rd episode of the show. She is the nervous but highly excitable cadet who is still very much studying at the academy, though she's on assignment here. In the 1st season, she is set up as a bright-eyed sidekick to Burnham, though her foray into the Mirror Universe gives her a chance to show some of her newfound confidence. The 2nd season depicts her attempts to master the command study program under Captain Pike. It's her arrival in the 32nd century that truly sees her blossom, dealing with the grief of having left everyone she's ever known behind and facing a very uncertain future. Who better then to instruct the new cadets at Starfleet's reopened academy in the show's 4th season? Now, with the announcement of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, hopefully we will continue to see Tilly's growth for many more years to come. Number 4. 7 of 9. There are few characters in Star Trek who were introduced to save the show's ratings, who went on to become one of the most integral pillars of the franchise as a whole. Jerry Ryan's 7 of 9 grew tremendously throughout the 7 years of Star Trek Voyager and has continued to get deeper and deeper in Star Trek Picard. Bringing her into this show has allowed Ryan to show a version of the X-Borg that has finally broken away from the rigorous mold that the Borg placed on her. 4 seasons of Voyager allowed her the room to grow, despite a last-minute ill-advised romance with Chakotay, and develop into one of the more human characters in the crew. Her journey's not too dissimilar to Data, though she achieved her humanity far sooner than he did. In Picard, her sense of right and wrong has become a massive crutch, leading her to the Fenris Rangers and protecting those who need help the most. Though she eventually ends up in that ever-elusive Starfleet uniform, it's clear that Seven's journey, from prisoner to defiant warrior to righteous defender, is one of the most engaging offered to us as fans. Hi, If you hadn't guessed, we recorded this video long before the finale for Picard Season 3. So just to add, obviously, Seven is now the captain of the Enterprise G. So to come from where she started to where she is now, I would say that that's some pretty extreme character development, wouldn't you? Number 3, Dr. Beverly Crusher. Appearing thanks to archive footage in all 7 seasons of The Next Generation and every episode of Star Trek Picard's 3rd season, Dr. Beverly Crusher benefited from one of the greatest arcs in the franchise, even if it did take a really long time to truly achieve this. For example, several seasons of The Next Generation drip-fed her story to the audience, and her absence from the entire 2nd season certainly didn't help. Ironically, she was one of the more developed characters in the show's debut year, which is something we don't often say about this iteration of Trek. Behind-the-scenes issues saw her depart for a year, but thankfully she returned. There was the standard for the time ongoing question of will they, won't they between Crusher and Picard, which thankfully saw a beautiful exploration in the 7th season episode Attached. Also, her character certainly suffered in the movies, which saw Gates McFadden essentially relegated to cameo status. Something that made me personally very sad, because Dr. Crusher is my favourite character. But Star Trek Picard has not only fixed that, but dealt with it head-on, making Crusher's story the main drive of the season. Her 20-year absence from the lives of her friends is explained fairly quickly, though thankfully, even in this, there is a multi-dimensional set of reasons. One that is gratefully received by the audience and gives McFadden a proper chance to shine. So thank you, Terry Matalas and the creatives behind Star Trek Picard Season 3. Me again. Again, we recorded this before the finale of Season 3 of Picard. Beverly Crusher is now an admiral and head of Starfleet Medical. Again, from where she started to now, pretty extreme development. Number 2, Nog. Aaron Eisenberg's Nog had arguably the most surprising arc of any on this list. Appearing in Emissary, he was clearly identified as Quark's nephew, one caught by Odo trying to steal items from abandoned shops on the promenade. A lesser show might have forgotten him after this, but Nog and of course his father Rom would go on to become major supporting characters over the course of Deep Space Nine. Nog striving to better himself, to push away from the expectations of Ferengi society and join Starfleet, is one of the most emotional rides throughout the show. The loss of his leg, particularly so late in the game, was a shocking twist. Eisenberg delivered a masterclass in performance when the character returned in It's Only a Paper Moon, speaking for every person who ever faced terror and survived, only to bear those scars for the rest of their lives. The loss of Aaron Eisenberg was felt by so many because, with or without the lobes, he left an indelible mark on the audience. From a hissing thief in Odo's grasp to proudly bearing the rank of lieutenant in the finale, Nog's journey is one of comedy, grief and catharsis. A beautiful thing for anyone to witness. Number 1, Spock. This entry seems obvious, but then it's obvious for a reason. Spock, the character with the very first spoken line in the history of the franchise, is still receiving character development to this day. He has appeared in the original series, the animated series, the Kelvin movies, The Next Generation, Discovery, Prodigy, and now Strange New Worlds. Now there is an argument that just on appearances alone, Spock has evolved far beyond anything that Gene Roddenberry could have imagined. Introduced as a satanic-looking alien struggling to understand emotion, he would be refined to a cooler logician, though even in his first run, there was enough examples of his experience with emotion that gave him depth. The movies would explore this further, so that the Spock who appears in Star Trek VI has grown immeasurably from the one who appeared in The Cage. He would receive further development in The Next Generation, introducing his new relationship with the Romulans. Recasting the character to depict a younger Spock, Zachary Quinto, and then later Ethan Peck, only serves to offer further insight into the franchise's first Vulcan. This is truly a case where expanding the material the audience had known creates a fuller, deeper Spock. The stories of Strange New Worlds are set in Star Trek's past, but each new entry allows the audience to understand Spock a little bit better, and to appreciate why this character was, and remains to be, one of the most popular characters in television history. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed someone, then please do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Trek Culture video ever again. Also, head over to Twitter and Instagram to follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Trek Culture. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember to boldly go where no one has gone before.